There was once a famous preacher by name of Antony. And so great a preacher was he that he decided that it was his duty to go amongst the heathen lands to the north and preach the word of Christ to the barbarians that lived there. And so he upped and he went to the northern lands and preached a sermon that soon became famous for its power. He would show the barbarian princes that their lives were but the flight of a swallow through some great Lord's hall, a momentary thing of swooping down and danger, for as the nets of men will trap a swallow as it flies through their houses, so the temptations of the flesh will trap the soul and hold it down, prevent it ever escaping, going back to the shining eternity of the sky. And he would say, all the gods of the barbarians would not save them, and a jot could not save them from the death that awaited them, only the great and redeeming God. And so powerfully did he preach this sermon, and so much fear did he create, that many men flocked to the ways of Christ in those days. And Antony became justly famous, and he grew happy. One day he was walking from city to city, when who should he see coming clip-clop, 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 walking towards him, running towards him, coming from behind. He turned, and there, running towards him, with horns on his head, cloven feet, and a goat's body, was a fawn, and it jumped up onto him, knocking him back, pinning him to the ground, and it struck its foot 5 times on his chest, and each time it struck his heart leaped until it seemed to jump into his very mouth with terror. And the figure shouted, "Now you are scared, surely you will follow my faith. I, the God of terror, come, let us dance together." But Antony reached as best he possibly could underneath his cowl for his cross, and holding it, prayed, and the figure vanished. Well, Antony was much grieved, and it seemed to him that he must be doing wrong. And he went then back to the Christian lands, where a heresy had taken hold. And he started to prove to those who would listen and preach a new sermon that showed the power and the might and the glory of the great God. A sermon that proved God's existence and his power through reason alone. And once again, Antony became famous in the scholars and the people, and many men were reconverted to Christ through his words, and he grew happy and proud once more. One day, he was walking from Italy to Greece, when who should he see come clobbing towards him but a mighty figure, half giant it seemed, and half horse, a centaur, beautiful to look at, with plaited tresses, and it came up very, very close and said, "Antony, Antony, my beloved Antony, my fellow follower in reason, for you, like I, know that the nets of reason can trap both gods and man, so that they are there for us to look at. Come, you and I, let us go and think and sit under that rock over there, and we'll put the world aright. Let us put God wherever he needs to be put, and man where he needs to be put, and explain all things." And hearing the blasphemy of these words, Antony ran. He ran through the hills as fast as he possibly could, lamenting how difficult it was to resist temptation. And yet a little quiet voice spoke in his breast and said, "Oh, it is not so very difficult. All one needs is a humble heart." And Antony wondered what that meant. After a long time he came to a dry plain, and when he was halfway across the plain he saw a pot. He looked inside the pot, and it was full of gold, and then he saw there was writing written on the rim, and he read, "This is yours, Antony, to do good with in the world." And he smiled and said, "Well, maybe I could do good with this, much good, for this is much wealth, and will give me much power, but I would be so proud by it, I renounce it." And he turned, and as he turned, the pot that was but the creature of Satan vanished. And Antony thought, I have done with men. Let me go and contemplate my Lord. And he went then to a cave in the hills, and dwelt there for a year and a day, meditating upon the mystery of being. And yet, as he meditated, as he fended for himself in the wild, his pride grew, if anything, and he felt it grow, and he could do nothing about it. And after a year he said, it's time for me to go back to the ways of men. For this solitary life has not made me a better person. And as he was so saying, he looked down sadly, and when he looked up, he was no longer alone. The cave was full of a bright and shining host. Angels, perhaps? Antony did not know. He said, who are you? And they replied, we are those spirits, the spirits created every time your heart feels more truly, your eye seizes further, and you reason better than your fellow men. We are yours to command, for we are so many. For even now your words and deeds sing in the minds of men. But we will be thrice greater yet, for at your leadership we will sweep through the world, making everything aright, calling everyone to Christ. Come, let us carry on the great and good work. And Antony paused, for although his heart leapt with sudden joy, it seemed to him, in answer to these figures, that silent voice in his breast, that quiet one replied, humble, remember humility. And Antony said, maybe you're angels, or maybe not. I do not know, but what I do know is that you are not mine. You rather belong in the hearts and the minds of the people you say who remember my deeds with kindness. I will not lead you. And he turned to go back to the cave. And as he turned, there was a sudden screeching noise. For the angels had become demons, and they proceeded to tear him to pieces. But just at that moment, disciples who had been looking him for over a year came up to their cave, hearing the screeching, and they drove off the demons and took bleeding Antony to a monastery nearby. And there he was bound, and his wounds started to heal. And when he could hobble out to be with his disciples again, he thanked them as best he could, but he also said, why did you do that? It was God's will that I was being torn apart. Maybe my redemption or maybe my death lay through it. I do not know, but I know that that was God's will. And so saying, he hobbled out of the monastery. He went off to the rocks, and his disciples, lamenting, followed him. When he came to the rocks, the demons, seeing him, jumped upon him again and tore him apart. And then his disciples begged that they too were torn apart, and the demons laughed at them. And their prides, aren't humans funny? They said. And the disciples, hearing that, grew abashed and prayed for their redemption and the redemption of Antony, their redemption together from pride. And God heard the prayer, for from on heaven there came a white and holy fire, a fire that burnt down, burning the demons quite up, and out of the fire, laughing with the love of God, stepped Antony himself. And it was said, from that time to the end of the days, he carried on his great ministry, a ministry quite without pride.